The evil plan for Paris.
To change Paris forever.
Eh?
Large parts of the historic center destroyed, and in its place, buildings that touched the sky and served as the headquarters for the French elite. It was the master plan of one of the most influential architects of the 20th century, Le Corbusier. As much a man who wanted to design buildings as one who wanted absolute power, and to see his vision for a centrally controlled, hierarchical society come to life. From the 1920s to the 1930s, Paris's population grew from 4 to 5 million. It was the highest density European city, outdoing London and Berlin. Life was dirty, diseased, and overcrowded. So in 1922, Le Corbusier came up with a supposed solution. He had designed a new city built for a modern man, and he took the ideals of that city and imagined a new Paris. His first city attempted to solve 4 problems: congestion in the center, inefficient density, inadequate transportation, and a lack of green open space. It divides into 9 zones. A main city with an intersection of 24 60-story cruciform towers, a middle section dedicated to residential space, split between luxury and working-class homes, and of course, a green belt separating industrial as well as garden cities. But it's important that we look closer, because it's a city designed with an iron fist.
Yeah, this is so like, it reminds me of like
the city is made out of only 3 buildings: the cruciform skyscraper, the redent, and the closed compound, each made to guarantee equal access to views and sunlight from whichever position. For the cruciform skyscraper, the serrated shape created traps for light, and the elites who work there would receive a better oversight over the masses that they were privileged enough to guide. And the other 2 buildings were residential, built with modular apartments ready for mass production. All 3 meticulously designed and controlled by a single person. But he went further. Some of his buildings were designed with concrete piles, creating a city on stilts. Not only did this give access to light on the ground floors, but it also created his new transportation network. He separated traffic into heavy, normal, and fast. Heavy traffic went underground.
How is it that no one can
with the
design
city
a
raised
city
on concrete piles. The underside of buildings could be used directly as areas for offloading and onloading. Since the ground floor was raised, that's where you'd find normal goods traffic, including pedestrian walkways. And the last network, concerning fast traffic, would be on raised highways running on a north-south, east and west axis. And all of these roads met at the center. At a multi-storied transportation hub, which included an aerodrome for air traffic for the planes that landed between the skyscrapers. And it's this city that was the model for a new Paris.
Okay.
From the sky, we can just begin to understand the sheer scale of Corbusier's plans. Paris has always had a dense network of roads and inner courtyards, and he purposely selected the most infectious neighborhoods, the narrowest of streets, to pave over, impacting around 7 arrondissements in total. By projecting the skyscraper onto the same scale section of Paris, we can get an idea of how many buildings the plan would raise. Like Corbusier's first city, Paris would be divided into zones. Sector A, the business center, containing 18 cruciform skyscrapers, with redents for additional residential space. Sector B, containing 2 cruciform skyscrapers, as well as a central station that was located underground. Sector C, the residential and administrative area, which is almost entirely occupied by the snaking redents of the first city. And then there is Sector D, containing 8 cruciform skyscrapers. Corbusier believed that the introduction of tall buildings would increase the density of Paris from around 300 to 1,400 inhabitants per acre, while increasing total area green space. Placed between the skyscrapers would be triple-floored malls and subways, which would connect all the skyscrapers with each other.
Like, oh, this would be good, but
his goal was to make Paris the world's city of administration.
Like, that's
if it wasn't
not
already
how
clear to you, it's probably
it
worth
works.
knowing that Corbusier was kind of a weird man. He created his own entirely new measurement system based on human length and the golden ratio. He was obsessed with reinforced concrete and the desire to put human beings in uniform, standardized cells. And unsurprisingly, he had a weird relationship with his mom, and also fascists, which often goes hand in hand. See, like the cities he designed, Corbusier believed in a strict, hierarchical, and centrally controlled society. His city was at its core, figuratively and literally, one of elite administration. The skyscrapers were to be the headquarters for the captains of business, of industry, of finance, of politics, masters of science, of pedagogy, of thought, the spokesman of the heart, the artists, poets, musicians. He drew up his own pyramid of natural hierarchies, arranging society with a technocratic elite at the top to an increasing bottom of the lesser skilled. And the top of that pyramid would use the skyscrapers, being able to clearly examine the world that they commanded. And at the end of the day, these elites would return to their luxury housing system in Sector C by using, of course, a massive, elevated highway running on a north-south, east-west axis. To make his plans more stomachable, in Sector A he'd maintain around 14 historical buildings. In Sector B, around 5. And in Sector C, around 7. If it came true today, you'd find a cathedral next to a gigantic skyscraper.
Yeah, that makes...
He also tried to dive into finances. According to Corbusier, if land values equaled A, and the previous rebuilding of Paris resulted in an increase of 5 times the land value without an increase in density, then surely his plan for building at a higher density would result in an increase of 4 times that land value. The logic, irrefutable. He approached the chief executives of major automobile companies, who he thought would support the massive new streets he had planned, and although he got some to agree with him, he didn't get enough. His plans were considered too radical, and they'd be rejected. But that wouldn't stop him. Until he died, Corbusier promoted his vision and worldview to other cities. And sometimes he did get his way, including with Brasilia, designed by a student of his, or Chandigarh in India, designed almost exclusively by Corbusier. And then there's also the Bijlmer in the Netherlands. Although it's not designed by Corbusier, it's probably the best example of the planning he had inspired. And he drew up plans for a lot of other major cities, not just Paris. He had plans for Geneva, Berlin, and Bogota. But likely the most insane plan he proposed was the plan he had for Algiers, the Plan Obus. It would lead to the construction of a superhighway skyscraper running over a historical city, with business skyscrapers overshadowing and hiding the views of the indigenous. It was the line before it wasn't ever cool. Corbusier's goal was to make Algiers the head of the African continent, and by extension, France. The story is fascinating, which is why I've made an entirely different video on it, which is exclusively on Nebula.
I mean, this
that
guy
you can
was
watch
just
right now. And once you're there, you can then binge watch some fantastic videos.